Gary Burghoff was an absolute delight. He brought that great charm to Radar, the teddy bear, the cuddliness, the naivete.
Gary Burghoff wasn't just Radar O'Reilly on MASH, he was the heart of the unit. With his teddy bear and boyish innocence, he brought a warmth and charm that fans never forgot. But behind that cuddly persona was a story full of shocking secrets, bitter feuds, and one co-star who outright hated him. Few shows in television history have had the cultural impact of MASH. It blended comedy and tragedy like nothing before it, ran for 11 unforgettable years, and closed with the most-watched series finale in TV history. But what you didn't see on screen were the battles, the strange casting choices, and the wild behind-the-scenes moments that shaped the show. Let's start with the surprising origins. MASH wasn't born on television. It began as a 1968 novel, written by a real Korean War surgeon under the pen name Richard Hooker. The darkly funny book about 3 Army doctors inspired not only the Oscar-winning movie, but the TV series that became a phenomenon. And then came the pilot. Writer Larry Gelbart, tired of the Hollywood grind and living in London, initially wanted nothing to do with TV. But when the idea for MASH landed in his lap, he couldn't resist. He banged out the pilot in just 2 days, sold it for $25,000, and unknowingly launched one of the greatest shows in history. But here's where it gets juicy. The casting nearly looked completely different. McLean Stevenson actually wanted to play Hawkeye, but the role went to Alan Alda. Robert Klein was offered Trapper John, but passed, clearing the way for Wayne Rogers. And Rogers, he never signed a contract, meaning he could walk off the set at any time, which created serious tension among the cast. Even crazier, Jamie Farr's character, Klinger, was never supposed to stick around. He was originally written as a one-off soldier trying to get out of the army by pretending to be gay, but the network thought that was too controversial. Instead, they rewrote him as a straight man in dresses, and Farr's performance turned him into one of the most beloved characters on the show. And while some actors were just pretending, Alan Alda and Jamie Farr weren't faking their military knowledge. They'd both served in the U.S. Army, giving their characters a rare authenticity. But not everything on the show was authentic. One battle behind the scenes was over the laugh track. The creators hated it. They thought adding canned laughter to war scenes was disrespectful. But CBS forced it in anyway. Something that would spark arguments for years. And trust me, this is just the beginning. Because as we dig deeper, you'll see how tensions boiled over, who feuded with who, and why Gary Burghoff, the lovable Radar, was secretly at the center of one of MASH's ugliest behind-the-scenes dramas. When it came to the laugh track, the creators fought a quiet war of their own. They hated it, believing forced laughter had no place in an operating room where characters were stitching up real wounds in the middle of war. The compromise? No laugh track during surgery scenes. By the final season, it was gone altogether. And in the UK, the BBC dropped it completely, letting audiences appreciate the show as the groundbreaking dramedy it really was. But MASH wasn't just about brilliant writing. The show also brought in some surprising faces. Ron Howard showed up as a wide-eyed Marine. Leslie Nielsen, long before Airplane, made him a comedy icon, appeared in a serious role. And Patrick Swayze, before Dirty Dancing and Ghost, played a soldier with a devastating diagnosis. Each cameo left a mark, blending Hollywood stardom with MASH's raw humanity. Sometimes the actors brought pieces of their own lives into the show. Mike Farrell's character, BJ, was written as a devoted family man. So devoted, in fact, that BJ's daughter was named after Farrell's real daughter, Erin. And Harry Morgan? The picture of Colonel Potter's wife on his desk wasn't a prop at all. It was a photo of Morgan's actual spouse. Of course, not everything on set was sentimental. The writers had their own battles with the cast. Actors complained constantly about dialogue and script changes, so the writers devised a ruthless prank. Twice, they rewrote scenes that forced the cast to wear heavy winter coats, while filming outside in 100-degree Malibu heat. By the end of the sweaty ordeal, the complaints mysteriously slowed down. Alan Alda was a perfectionist in his own right. To tie the series to its roots, he wore the exact same hat Donald Sutherland used in the 1970 MASH movie, a tiny detail that connected the film to the show for eagle-eyed fans. And speaking of props, Radar's teddy bear became one of the most famous in TV history. For years after the finale, fans thought it was lost forever. But decades later, it resurfaced, only to be auctioned back into the hands of Gary Burghoff himself, completing the circle. The writers loved sneaking in Easter eggs too. In Season 6, they named 4 Marines after real players from the California Angels. In Season 7, they swapped in names from the Los Angeles Dodgers. And when Radar finally got his emotional goodbye, his girlfriend was named Patty Haven, a little inside nod to writer Ken Levine's ex-girlfriend. But sometimes, the inside jokes slipped into full-blown mistakes. In one episode, Radar was seen flipping through a comic book that didn't even exist during the Korean War. It wasn't published until 1969, more than a decade later. And in another scene, Klinger offered a wounded soldier a chocolate bar with a UPC barcode, which wouldn't be invented until the mid-70s. These tiny slip-ups didn't ruin the magic, but they reminded fans that even the most carefully crafted shows sometimes broke their own time machine. Here's the wildest part. MASH actually lasted longer than the Korean War itself. The real conflict dragged on for just over 3 years. The show? 11. Almost 4 times as long. But instead of weakening it, the longevity gave the writers more room to explore trauma, healing, and the absurdity of war, all while keeping millions glued to their TVs. And yet, for all its brilliance, all its heart, and all its laughs, one truth lurked behind the cameras. Not everyone on set got along. In fact, one beloved star absolutely despised Gary Burghoff. The reasons? Messy, dramatic, and deeply personal. And that's where things start to get really ugly. By this point, MASH had grown into much more than just a quirky war comedy. It became a cultural mirror, mixing satire, dark humor, and gut-punching drama that reflected not only the Korean War, but also the wounds of Vietnam and the uneasy politics of the 70s and 80s. And no one shaped that balance more than Alan Alda. As Hawkeye Pierce, Alda wasn't just cracking jokes. He was steering the heart of the show. He fought to weave in social commentary, exploring morality, trauma, and the human cost of war. And behind the camera, his impact was even greater. Alda wrote or directed 31 episodes, including the legendary finale, and made TV history as the first person to win Emmys for acting, writing, and directing on the same series. His fingerprints are everywhere, keeping MASH sharp, heartfelt, and timeless. But even a masterpiece slips up sometimes. In Season 10's Show Biz, the camera accidentally exposed rubber T markers, little cues actors used to know where to stand. Normally invisible, they were caught in plain sight during an emotional farewell scene, yanking viewers out of the story with a rare peek behind the curtain. And the goofs didn't stop there. In the episode Communication Breakdown, the story focused on a much-needed newspaper arriving at camp. But sharp-eyed fans spotted something completely out of place. A modern-looking man with long blonde hair, a beard, and a blue shirt casually strolling in the background. He looked more 1970s California than 1950s Korea. A hilarious production slip that made it into the final cut. These little blunders didn't ruin the show's legacy. In fact, they've become part of its charm. Because for every mistake, MASH delivered powerful storytelling that kept audiences hooked for over a decade. And yet, while the show was winning Emmys and changing TV forever, tensions among the cast were boiling over behind the scenes. One feud in particular left scars that fans are still talking about today. Even a show as polished as MASH had its slip-ups. In one episode, a crew member accidentally wandered into frame, proof that even award-winning productions occasionally let reality sneak past the illusion. But mistakes aside, MASH also made history. Its finale, Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen, remains the most-watched television episode in American history. Airing in 1983, it drew in 77% of U.S. households, more viewers than the Super Bowl that same year. Advertising prices skyrocketed, and the emotional 2.5-hour send-off cemented MASH as one of the most important shows of all time. Still, the finale wasn't flawless. In one surgical scene, Hawkeye dives into another patient without washing his bloodied hands, a shocking medical blunder that slipped past the writers and directors. For a show that often strove for realism, it was a rare but glaring oversight. And while MASH spawned several spin-offs, Trapper John, MD, After MASH, and Walter, none captured the magic of the original. Fans wanted more, but lightning simply didn't strike twice. One story that did endure, though, came from the show's second-to-last episode. The cast buried a time capsule on set, only for it to be discovered months later by a construction worker after the land was sold. Unsure what to do, the worker called Alan Alda, who told him to keep it as a piece of TV history. Strangely, the worker didn't seem all that impressed, and that brings us to the biggest behind-the-scenes shocker of them all. Not every cast member got along. In fact, one feud boiled over so badly, it ended with a chair being thrown on set, directed at none other than Gary Burghoff, the man behind Radar O'Reilly. Gary Burghoff may have played the sweet and loyal Radar O'Reilly, but behind the cameras, not everyone found him so easy to work with. Wayne Rogers, who played Trapper John, famously clashed with him. Their disagreements escalated so badly during one scene that Rogers lost his temper and hurled a chair in Burghoff's direction. McLean Stevenson, the lovable Colonel Henry Blake, admitted that his own relationship with Burghoff was a mix of admiration and exasperation. He openly called it love-hate, confessing that while they respected each other's talent, they often drove one another crazy. But the deepest friction came between Alan Alda and Gary Burghoff. Alda, the creative powerhouse of MASH, often pushed the show's direction forward, while Burghoff felt overlooked and undervalued. That resentment sometimes came out as coldness or sharp exchanges, creating a tension that lingered behind the show's comedic brilliance. It's a reminder that even in one of television's most beloved series, the pressures of fame, long hours, and strong personalities could boil over into conflict. Yet despite the drama, the cast always kept it professional enough to deliver a series that became nothing short of legendary. And that's the fascinating truth about MASH. An unforgettable show filled with laughter, heartbreak, history-making moments, and yes, even its share of battles off the battlefield. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the secrets of MASH, make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment about your favorite moment, and subscribe so you never miss our next story. And don't go anywhere. Click the video on your screen right now, because the next one is even more unbelievable.